Does public participation and seeing a member from the public. I will invite you to tell us who you are and
Thank you. Tara from West Acton, and I'm concerned for two reasons. I'm concerned that the FinCom liaison didn't contact me on all my articles, so I hope you can wait on those that weren't, there was no contact. The other thing is that I'm concerned about the 32 Weatherby because I feel like although they have a plan to keep it commercial, they won't deed restrict it to ensure that it stays commercial. And so they're like, oh, well, forever is a long time. And it's like, well, that means to me you're reserving the right to. And that would be millions of dollars for a developer to get that piece of parcel. So, thank you.
thank you,
A
Tara.
residential developer.
Okay.
For unaffordable luxury condos. Thank you.
You love those. Any other members of the public who wish to speak at this time? Okay. Seeing none, we will move to our next agenda item, which is a warrant article discussion and our vote on recommendations or lack thereof. So I think we'll just go ahead and go down the list. We've already spoken our piece on the town operating budget. The town capital infrastructure, vehicles and studies is the second item. Roland is not here and that was his item, but Roland indicated through email that this is the same capital and infrastructure project list that we have discussed previously and that we have been in favor of previously, and he recommends that we recommend this article. Is there any further discussion needed on this item?
I'll make a motion to recommend.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of recommending this article, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Great. Just real quick for the newer people in the room, these votes will be in the town warrant that will be sent out to the public and next to Finance Committee to either say that we recommend it, we do not recommend it, or we make no recommendation. So that's what we're going through this evening so that we can get them printed for public consumption. Okay, and then the same thing with the town capital infrastructure design and construction. Again, stuff that we have discussed in the past, Roland's article, and he suggested that we recommend it. Any further discussion on that?
Motion to recommend.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of recommending town capital infrastructure design and construction, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Jason abstains. Okay. Dave abstains. Okay, Article 7, ABRSD. Isha, by the way, nice haircut.
We voted that last meeting.
We voted that last week, so we're already recommending that article. Minuteman Regional School District, Mike. Excellent. Good job, Mike. Community Preservation Program, this is Roland. One moment.
I do recall we received all of those the day after, I believe, that Mr. Charter presented to us. Is that right?
I think so. So we were presented these these items by Dean Charter. Is it typical that we go down this list, Jason?
Yes, Madam Chair, it's typical that we do this as a consent calendar and see if anybody would like to hold anything.
Okay, so I will do that then. So I will accept a motion on and then the list, or accept a motion to recommend on and then the list.
Usually, Madam Chair, what you do is you read through each line item and see if people would like to hold or not.
Okay.
Anything that does not get held, we would then vote on block, and anything that does get held on, we would take up individually.
All right, excellent, thank you. Community preservation fund components. Is it everything in black?
I recommend you just...
You want to read it? This is great, Jason, could you do it?
Very well.
Thank you.
You can read the letter.
Does anyone wish to hold a acquisition, creation, preservation of open space, and rehabilitation, restoration?
Is that number 9?
This is Article number 9.
Okay, because I'm reading off of the
Article number 9,
list,
Section
which reads
A.
differently than the warrant.
Community preservation programs.
Yeah, so they
9.
just don't say the exact same thing, that's all. That's why I wanted clarification.
Okay. Anyone care to hold A? Anyone care to hold B? Yes, I would care to hold B.
Okay,
C,
that's the Asa
B,
Parlin.
Asa
B.
Parlin.
It's in the book, page 29.
Section C, Shoddy Mill, 53 River Street. Would anyone care to hold it?
Nope.
Section D, Revolutionary War Gravestone Restoration.
Can I slow you down for just a moment?
Yes.
Which ones did we want to hold? A?
Just B.
So far, just B.
Just hold. Okay.
D, Revolutionary War Gravestone Restoration. E, Ironwork Farm, storm windows at Jones Tavern. F, Ironwork Farm, exterior painting at Faulkner. G, Gardner Playground, Phase 3 landscaping. H, Elm Street tennis courts. I, Heath Hen Meadow Boardwalk. J, AHA Windsor Green window replacement. K, Regional Housing Services Program. L, Habitat for Humanity, 26 Carlisle Road. M, Acton Community Housing Corporation, Community Housing Program Fund. N, the Fund for CPC Direct Expenses for reimbursing the town of Acton for administrative services. O, Wright Hill Open Space Land Acquisition, debt. P, Piper Lane Open Space Land Acquisition, debt. Q, Asa Parlin Phase 2 stabilization. I would like to hold that as well.
Which letter?
Q.
Q.
Madam Chair, the only things that have been held are B and Q.
Okay, I will take a motion for all of the community preservation program items other than B and Q.
Motion to approve. Motion to recommend.
All right. All those in favor of recommending the items indicated, leaving out B and Q, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. Okay, so let's discuss item B, Asa Parlin Phase 2 stabilization, and I will go ahead and let Jason lead us off.
Thank you very much. I'm more than happy to take these both as a pair. I think anything
Okay.
to do with the Asa Parlin House, I would, as was discussed in previous meetings, I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I would much prefer to see a full plan come before the town meeting for its up or down vote, and have that full meeting, have that full plan, have a very close estimate, or at least a best guess estimate of what the total project cost would be. If it turns out there is appetite from town meeting to do such a project, then by all means, let's figure out how to fund it. In the meantime, rather than doing piecemeal work, such as I believe it was, and I could be wrong, is either $50,000 or $55,000 that CPC did a couple of years ago for the asbestos removal, I would prefer that we withhold all funds from this until it's done. Furthermore, as a corollary, when this does get brought to town meeting as a full plan, I would like to recommend that it be an either or. Either we do the full plan, or we get rid of this property, or get rid of this structure. Obviously, I want to keep the property, but get rid of the structure once and for all, knowing that that would require input from the Historic District Commission. So at this time, I believe it is best to withhold all funds until we've got approval of a full plan.
Okay, any other comment? Christie?
What's being proposed here is effectively demolition by ignoring it. These are necessary repairs for that building to potentially ever be useful. I think in some ways we will be signing a death warrant on this if we don't know that it's going to be handled in the next few years. I appreciate that. I would like there to be a full plan. I'm going to take it on the town's word that this is what needs to happen to maintain the structure until that's said. I would not at all support any further work until we know what a full plan is on it, but I'd given that the HDC has said that this building cannot be taken down, and they have the ability to do that unless we want to commit to it falling down, which is an option, I think that we should support this specific use of the money with the idea that we will not, this does not imply future support of the development of the property.
Okay. Adam?
Yeah, I think at this point, it's a difficult choice for me to make which direction we'd like to go. I'm not in total support of saving the building and putting any money into it because it doesn't seem like it would be terribly useful in the long run. So I guess I'm in favor of the skillful neglect approach of we're not allowed to tear it down, but there's no rule that says we can't let the thing rot to the ground. It's a horrible situation to be in, but I think it's a better situation than piecemealing money into it with no end in sight.
Isha?
I tend to agree with Adam.
Okay. Anyone else? Mike?
Yeah, I think the Asa Parlin house is kind of a unique property, and it is historical, although it, for not the reasons people think it's historical, like I think we believe it wasn't Asa Parlin's house. But I think it could have some purpose for the town. It is an interesting historical structure, and I think we at least while it's still in the planning stages of what to do with it, we should at least try to preserve it and do the structural improvements so it won't fall down, especially if we're not allowed to tear it down. Yeah, the initial plan I think was not quite appropriate. I don't think the Asa Parlin house was large enough for the ideas that they had for its intended use, but I think it does have an intended use. We just haven't found it yet. I think it would make some nice conference space for a medium-sized meeting room area that the town really could use, but the plan as it was submitted, I don't think was appropriate. But as the other members of the committee mentioned, I think it's worthy of being stabilized structurally.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Steve?
Mike, probably 15 years ago, we had a plan to make conference space out of that. It wasn't feasible then. It won't be feasible in the future. As far as the place falling down, I've kind of been hoping for that for the last 15 years. It hasn't happened. I don't know that another year will make a lot of difference, so I don't support throwing another, whatever, $200,000 into the place until we actually know what we're going to do with it and how much it's going to cost to do it.
Yeah, the selectmen did at one point vote to tear it down, and they missed their opportunity.
Okay.
Well, they were
Agreed.
not allowed.
Agreed. Okay, so the Historic Commission has determined that the building can't come down.
Historic District.
Sorry, I apologize, the Historic District Commission. The town voted to keep the building. So I guess personally, I don't know that I fully appreciate any value in the property other than that it's sitting on the campus area of the town hall, and that it's at the moment an eyesore. And I guess at this point, we have to do something with it. And for me, I would say that this stabilization money should be the last penny spent on it until a fully approved design. But like Christie, if it has been determined that this is the amount necessary to stabilize, then so be it. Jason?
May I respond very quickly and
Sure.
then make a motion? I believe the comments about this is the money that we need until we get a plan was the same argument at the time with the 50, or I can't remember, it was $50,000 or $55,000 for the partial demolition and returned removal of the 1970s space. So I'm afraid I really don't, I don't put much water into that argument. So with that, I would like to move that we do not recommend sections B and Q.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Christie?
I don't know the specific era of the house or the framing, but it is entirely possible that if you're simply waiting for it to fall down, it won't. Post and beam, if it's of that era, it's really hard to take apart. It's the structure of my barn that has looked like it's falling off the house forever. And the guy who came and fixed it, he said, you need serious machinery to take these things down. Drive around the New England countryside and you'll see tons of barns that are leaning that just haven't fallen over. It's really hardy. So what we might be looking at is just waiting for the wood to rot or termite damage or something that'll take it out, but we're probably waiting a really long time. That said, I don't disagree with the idea that I don't know what can happen there. Frankly, I have not liked and I have argued loudly against the plans we've seen come forward. But I don't know. I don't think not spending this money is going to help us.
Adam?
I'll make one last comment to try to sway an aye vote from anybody who's on the fence, and that is that I think the fiscally responsible thing for the FinCom to do is to not recommend spending this money, and I think that the probable outcome will be that the town will vote to spend the money.
Anyone else? Okay, so the current vote to not recommend B and Q has been made and seconded. All those in favor of not recommending those articles, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Nay.
How many nays?
2.
3.
3,
Oh,
It's
3?
not a,
4, 3.
yep. The ayes have it. So we will not be recommending B and Q. Moving along. Okay. Preservation of archaeology. Say that one more time? Sure. Can I have the ayes raise their hands? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I heard 4.
Okay.
Should we roll through all of them just for?
Oh, sure, and the nays raise their hands just for clarity's sake.
Got it.
Okay. You can vote,
We just won't count.
we won't count it, but we are not uninterested in your opinions. Got it. Okay, so Adam won't count them officially, but, I mean, I always voted as an associate, I was encouraged to. You may. It's up to you. Okay, Article 10 is the archaeology bylaw, but in
That's mine.
my warrant list, I have the home rule petition bidding requirement exemption for affordable housing project before that, but not so in the book in front of me. So I will go ahead with the archaeology one at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. That happens to be mine as well. I had an excellent conversation with Bob Ferrara about this yesterday, and I do want to point out that there's the very real possibility of a potential worst-case scenario and the practical reality. So this is actually something that I'm going to have to come back to for a couple of my articles tonight. So the $10,000 that has been recommended to start with this is expected to be capable of doing anywhere between 6 and 10 of these first phase. Well, actually, do I need to step back and explain more about what this is? Would the committee like me to explain more about what the options are?
Yes.
Okay, very well. Okay, so this, I should have started with that. My apologies. This bylaw would necessitate adding on as part of the parallel process of pulling a permit on specific mapped parts of the town that could well have archaeological significant activity or remnants in it. A first round opportunity for the for a specialist archaeologist to go and take a look and see if the property would merit a more in-depth research. There is a 94-day maximum delay as a result of this. But it is important to note that at the end of the 94 days, or significantly sooner if all process goes well, there is no, even if there is evidence of a reason to do further study, there is no force in making someone do a further study. There is the potential for an invitation for the property owner to do a more in-depth study, and that more in-depth study would come out of town finances as well. It would probably end up having to be some kind of negotiation with the landowner, because the spirit of the bylaw is not to stop development per se, but is to make sure to give the opportunity to document, describe, preserve where possible any archaeologically significant artifacts that might be found. To do this, they have already set aside $10,000. The first phase study, ballpark is $1,000 per, could be as much as $1,500 per. That's why they're saying that they expect that first $10,000 to be capable of doing 6 to 8 of the initial studies. The more in-depth studies are going to be significantly more expensive, and when I spoke with Bob about this yesterday, he said that we should use in the back of our mind approximately $10,000 per parcel as the cost of doing the more in-depth study. The source of these funds is the CPC grant that's already there. There is conversation about asking the CPC to contribute into another set-aside fund, specifically for archaeology on an ongoing basis. So the risk of, the worst case scenario is, what if this becomes wildly popular, right? What if there are scores of landowners that want to take advantage of a free archaeological survey on their property? In a worst case scenario, yes, this could absolutely quickly overrun the CPC set aside, especially considering they don't even have enough money to do one of the second round studies at this time. So as I said at the very onset of this, there is the conversation about worst case scenario and what is the practical possibility. If I were to be making recommendations strictly on the worst case scenario, I would say that this is unfenced and is therefore a risk to the town, because it could very quickly overrun any monies that the CPC might be able to set aside. That said, over the last couple of years, the expectation is there would be at most 4 properties that would qualify even for this first pass study. Also, the verbiage of the bylaw does allow the committee to take a pass, the archaeology review to take a pass. Even if somebody walks through and goes, there might be something there, they can say, yeah, we're not interested in this one, we're gonna let it go by. So there is a very real opportunity for quite a bit of judgment in all of this. I would also say that the fact that this is not a binding recommendation, even if the recommendation at the end of the first phase is to proceed, the property owner does not need to take us up on it. They can choose to keep on going. Or they can choose to have town expenditures help them survey their own property. Given that it is something that can be waived quickly, something that does not actually impugn on landowner rights, and is something that's done in parallel with the rest of the permitting process, I see no harm in this moving forward, especially considering this is coming out of CPC funds. The only ongoing risk from a financial perspective that I see to the town is, the only risk that I see to the town ongoing is that it does commit CPC to putting some money aside every year to help replenish that fund or to build it up for the opportunity to have enough of those second round studies. So with all that said, I am very afraid of it becoming wildly popular, but my judgment says it probably won't be. So I'm willing to recommend this article.
I'll second that.
Too long-winded? Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Any further discussion on what Jason has described? Dave, go ahead.
I just had a few questions. Is it the Acton Historical Commission that's putting this forward?
It is the Acton Historical Commission that's putting this forward.
And, does CPC support this?
CPC money did come out, the $10,000 from, I believe it was two years ago, did come out of CPC. There is the expectation that CPC would be supportive moving forward. I would love to ask Roland if he's got any insight on that from the liaison perspective, but unfortunately he's not here. I would assume there is support from the CPC.
Is there any other groups in town that are supportive? I saw the select board voted in support.
Yes, the select board did vote to recommend this, and I would also say that it was, in the conversation that I had with Bob Ferrara yesterday, he did say that they would actively also be trying to go after grants, which is, as I've publicly said numerous times, something that we're good at in this town. So I would say that while the CPC is the primary de facto source of revenue for this, it should not be considered to be the only source.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Okay, we have a motion to recommend and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, then we will recommend it. Thank you. Article 11, accept streets, community lane, Kelly's Corner. That's not the naming, right? That's just accepting. I think this is Mike's article.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing that the town, I think it has very little or no cost impact on the town. It's just, the street is currently named informally Community Lane, as, just pick a name. And in our goal to honor Carol Spinney, it was decided that that would be an appropriate use of the street name to honor Big Bird, Carol Spinney. So I think we can move forward with this.
Would you like to recommend it?
What's that?
Would you like to recommend it?
I move that the Finance Committee recommend this article.
Second.
Any other comments? I'm a big fan of receiving free roadways. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. Okay, accept street relocation and layout, Main Street, Kelly's Corner. I believe this is Christie.
Madam Chair, I would like at this point that we have encountered some series of consent articles to recommend that we go through and hold only some articles for actual discussion. I know that I have upcoming articles that are repeated absolutely every year and do not even need to be discussed. The Select Board very successfully did this last night. Very quickly, why I believe this is the first article on the consent section is because this is simply getting the land that is necessary for the reallocation. It's approving the redesign that has been agreed on and approved for the Kelly's Corner.
Okay, with that in mind, I will, yes, Adam.
Just as a point of question, does this also include items 1, 2, and 3, which also have a star, and I assume then are also consent items?
Yes.
Thank you.
I will list off the remaining consent items. If anybody would like to hold them for discussion. Steve?
Madam Chair, if I could interrupt, since we have new members, is it worth going through them individually so that we can explain what they are? Because yes, those of us who've been doing this for so long and seen them every year, just rattle them off like they don't exist, but they have a purpose. We can go quick.
Could go quick. So that is one move to hold them all. Is there any objection? Any objection to my attempt to move swiftly through the consent items, but not vote on them as a block? Okay. Thank you. Anything else to say about Kelly's Corner?
Just a quick note, the actual cost of the acquisitions required for Kelly's Corner came in, I believe it was $472,000 when town meeting approved in 2019, I think it was, or 2020, $600,000 for it, so came in under budget.
Wow.
That said, I move that we recommend this article.
I'll second that. Any further comment? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. Okay, next, amend general bylaw, dates of annual town meeting and town election.
That's mine.
Steve?
We've always had the meeting on the first Monday in April, which coincides with the National Basketball Championship game. The reasons listed in the warrant are that we would better coordinate with the timing of the Boxborough town meeting, which would help the school district. The other thing is another month will make a difference, maybe when state aid becomes a more relevant piece of our budget, because certainly I think coming this time around, a new governor, which we will have, gets an extra month or so to put out their budget. So any additional time we have will be of assistance, and the weather will be better. So I recommend this article. I move that we recommend this article.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Great. D, Department Revolving Funds, Stormwater, any comments?
No, just really briefly talk to this, as there's some recent organizational changes in town. This is more just to change some bookkeeping in the town bylaws, changing the word land use to public works, where the responsibility for this revolving fund now resides. The revolving fund spending should still be brought forward to town meeting. Otherwise, it's just, as it states here, renaming land use to public works inside of the town bylaws. Motion to recommend.
Second.
Great, further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. Floodplain District. Steve Walsh, were you able to? Yeah. Can you go ahead and turn that on? Yep.
I did spin through this. So I think this is just wording changes that have no bearing from a finance perspective, but certainly if anybody else has a different opinion.
How many pages was this?
Oh my goodness, it just keeps
So
going.
there's, the version that I had on mine had, there's three sentences that are added on in red, which I did cull out, so I can say what they are, but I think they have no bearing on anything from a finance perspective as it relates to the town.
Okay. But the floodplain, John Mangiarotti, the floodplain district, does this have any financial impact that you know of?
Well, the flood plain has impacted individual homeowners. The town, our job is just to make sure people know what it is. And
Okay.
our bylaws need to reflect what it is. And
Okay.
I think this is an update just to make sure that the changes that were made are reflected in our bylaws.
Okay, all right, so excellent, just bookkeeping for the
Sure.
most part, cleaning up, great. So, given that it doesn't have a financial impact, would you recommend, that we recommend this article?
I was assuming that we would have no opinion on this article.
That's another way to go. There are members of this committee who feel like we should have an opinion regardless, and there are members who feel that we don't need to make a recommendation when there's money involved. You don't have to know which side of that you fall on yet.
Sure.
I'll accept a motion from anyone.
I don't know the exact nomenclature, but I would recommend that we have no opinion around this.
Okay, so this is he moves for no recommendation. I will second that. Isha seconds that. Okay, so this is a motion to make no recommendation, as it is a housekeeping change that has no financial implications. Discussion?
Madam Chair, how'd you know I was going to?
Go ahead.
I believe that everything has a financial impact. If we don't update this bylaw, we could theoretically have litigation problems in the future if we were found out not to have done the right thing. So if this needs to be done for housekeeping purposes to keep the wheels of government moving smoothly, then by all means, let's get behind it and recommend it. So I'll be voting against a no recommendation.
Christie?
This is required for people to stay within having the federal flood insurance. That is really hard to get privately. It is completely unaffordable. The fact that this map has been updated is actually wonderful because we're having huge flooding problems everywhere across the country. I think there is a significant financial impact for the town members to whom this applies, and therefore is something that we should consider. I will also be voting no against,
Fair
no
enough.
recommendation.
Fair enough.
Was there a second on the motion?
There was, would you like to withdraw your second now that it has been considered that there may be?
You know what? I probably have to abstain from this because I may have a conflict of interest.
Oh, okay. I'll withdraw my potential second. Would you like to withdraw your not recommended? Would you like to recommend this article?
I will recommend this article.
I'll second your recommendation. All those in favor of recommending this article, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Isha abstains for her conflict of interest. Okay, Article 16, terminology of the Select Board. So this is a follow-up on previous vote to renamed the Board of Selectmen to the Select Board, and now that needs to be changed on all documentation. Another housekeeping that probably has minuscule financial impact. But in the minuscule financial impact world, that does include a financial impact. I move we recommend this article.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So done. Article 17, amend zoning bylaw, correct cross-reference for ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installation. Who has this one? That's a lot of words. I have it as Jason.
Me, it's literally changing one character in the bylaw.
I move to have no recommendation. Is there a second?
Hearing no second, I move that we recommend this article.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say, yes, Dave?
By making this change, we'll have to reprint a lot of this, so there's a cost associated with it.
Very well.
Now I'm going to have to vote for it. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. Payments via direct deposit. Is this you also, Jason?
Yes, it is.
All right, keep going.
This is also just bringing us into the modern age. Let's let people pay us the way they want to pay us. Motion to recommend.
Second.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. Cowett Simeon Conservation Land, 20 Maple Street. Oh, I lost my place on the list. Who has 20 Maple Street land lease? Mike. Mike, you have land lease, 20 Maple Street. Do you have any thoughts or opinions about that one?
I think it's a good deal.
Can you turn on your mic, please? Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's a good deal. It's basically, I believe, where it's going to be parking spaces for the, up and some development opportunities for the town. I think it makes sense. I vote that we recommend.
Second.
Hold on a second, I just want to read this real quick. And this is just an acceptance.
I'm sorry, this is not parking related.
Yeah, I don't think this is parking related as either.
I think that was 19 to 21 Maple. This must be across the street or some such.
To see if the town will authorize the select board to enter into a lease on such terms and conditions as the select board may determine pursuant to mass law for all or a portion of land at 20 Maple Street, shown as parcel 62 on the town of assessor's map, and parcel 61, further showed as lot 1, plan of land in Acton, dated, or take any action. John, do you happen to have any further information that you could give us on this one?
Sure, this is related to
Christy, could you point your microphone at him, just for those at home? Thanks.
This is related to the recent, the town-supported effort to preserve the farm,
Oh.
Stonefield
That's the wrong
Farm.
property. I had the wrong
And this authorizes the board to enter into a license agreement to let the farm entity, Boston Area Gleaners,
That's
use the
Gleaners.
land for the purpose of, for agricultural purposes.
Okay, great. Oh, thank you, Dave.
It's currently a license agreement, and this would provide for a more stable instrument for them to use the land
Okay,
as we intended it to be used.
excellent. And in the past,
Yeah, that's right. I had the wrong property, but that's,
quite all right.
it's access to the farm where they grow the vegetables and then distribute them. That's also obviously a very good deal.
Yes.
What's the term they use for those farmers?
The Boston Area Gleaners?
Gleaners, yes.
Yes. And in the past, this body
Right.
recommended that use of that land.
Right.
So, a motion?
I vote that I move that we recommend this motion.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. Okay, and then accept gift of land and easement, 180 Newtown Road, that is Adam.
That is me. I don't think there's really any notes that I made on this. Yeah, because it's exactly what it says. This is, sorry, my bad. I can just read you the article really quick, and then you'll know exactly what it is. So the town wants to accept a gift from Rennell LLC, a parcel of land and an easement that goes with it consisting of 12.68 acres, more or less, shown on parcel 10 on the town of Acton Assessor's Map D3, identified as open space on a plan of land entitled Genevieve Lane, 180 Newtown Road, definitive subdivision, PCRC development. There's a little bit more to that, but nothing important. The other issue is that benefit is that it connects more cohesively the Grassy Pond Conservation Land on the north side of Newtown Road or the east side of Newtown Road better with the Boulac Conservation Land and the Anderson Conservation Land on the south side of the road. There are no costs listed with this, and I move that we recommend.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. All right, home rule petition, bidding requirements, exemption, Acton Housing Authority.
I think this is me.
Is that you, Dave? Okay, great.
Yeah, essentially what this article does is it'll allow the town to petition the state to loosen up the ability for the McManus Manor located at this 364 Main Street to use more competitive bidding for their subbids. So any sort of HVAC, fire, siding, roofing, et cetera, at the state level is restricted on how they can bid on that for certain low-income sorts of tax-credited projects. And what this is going to do is look for an exemption for this specific parcel of land for this bidding, which should open the project up for more competitive bidding and theoretically allow slightly lower rates and fees for these individual subbids for it. It seems relatively straightforward, and I don't have any context on whether the state typically approves these sorts of requests, but that's out of really the scope of this article, so I make a motion that we recommend this.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Great. Thank you. Avi, you have home rule petition, public safety residency radius requirement, but I know this came to you a little last minute. Did you have any chance to look into this at all?
22, right?
Yeah, yes, 22.
Yeah, I think it's very straightforward. It's allowing or authorizing the select one to increase the limit if they can, for the residency of the firefighter and police. Currently, it is 15 miles, and the reason or the proposal to increase the limit is so that they can get more applicants and more pool of people who can apply to these jobs. I think it's very straightforward. I recommend it.
Okay, it's been recommended. Do I hear a second? Second. Excellent. Any further discussion? Awesome, thank you. All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. Moving on. Dispatch collective bargaining. That must be Steve.
Yeah, well, I can talk to 23, 24, 25, and 26.
Great.
These are all still placeholders. There are no agreements to approve. By state law, the first year's funding of a collective bargaining agreement needs to be approved by town meeting. There is a potential that before town meeting actually occurs, there could be agreements reached, but at this time, there is none, so I recommend we follow the selectmen's lead and just defer on all four.
Okay. Great. We don't need to take a vote on that, do we?
I don't believe so.
Okay, any further discussion on that?
Do we have any inkling as to whether or not any of these are going to come up between now and town meeting? Mr. Manager
Town manager.
or select board?
I would be quoting the manager, but I might as well.
Phone a friend.
I'm optimistic that we will not have zero to bring forward. I'm hoping that we have at least one. But time, we're running out of time at this point, so
Yeah.
we're doing the best we can.
So if I may add, thank you very much, Mr. Manager. If I may add, that means it's usually the most important thing that we discuss, the hour-long meeting that we have right before a town meeting for the new members. It's just for this type of situation.
Yes. Okay, excellent. So we'll defer, and that'll be printed in the warrant book, and that is not uncommon in these situations. Okay, then on to Article 27, commuter lot and station maintenance. That's Dave.
Yeah, another typically consent item. This is just the fund balance for the commuter lot and station maintenance minus the debt service for the property that we purchased 3 years ago or so next to it, and the estimated fund balance. I don't have numbers here for revenue or expenses, but as everyone's likely aware here, the train station parking lots are operating well below capacity, and so these numbers are very low. You could ask the logical question, where will we be with this fund balance and debt service in the next fiscal year? That's a good question. We can cross that bridge when we get to it. Motion that we recommend this article.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And you read my mind with that question that you pre-answered.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would like to address Articles 28 through 33 collectively, please, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 enterprise funds and 1 revolving fund.
Excellent, as long as
and-
you promise to pass on your extensive knowledge to our newest
Yes, I'd
members
like-
at your earliest convenience.
I'd like to preamble that I had involuntarily assigned these to our 2 newest members, but I had done that under the caveat that I would take you under my wing and give you as good a presentation as Steve Barrett gave me, but we can do that post facto.
Excellent.
The revolving fund is a net zero change between years. I don't think there's really much of anything to comment on. In fact, the only other thing I would mention is that the ambulance enterprise fund, which receives a subsidy from town revenues, I won't comment. I was thinking that it was less than it was in the previous year, but actually it looks like it's more, so it's irrelevant. It's what's required to get the budget finished for the year. So I would like to move that we recommend Articles 28 through 33.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on these? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. Article 34, authorized easements. This is Jason. but only because Steve said so out loud, I don't actually see it on my list. There it is. It is Jason.
Okay. I will admit, I didn't do any research on this one because this is just saying, yes, if somebody wants to grant us a right to use something, we should take it. So motion to recommend.
Second.
All right, in the interests of accepting possible free gifts, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. Highway reimbursement program,
That's the one that gets held up at town meeting, I have to speak to.
that would be hilarious if it got held up in town meeting. Highway reimbursement is Roland. I'm just going to channel Roland here and say that this is another housekeeping in which we accept reimbursement funds under Chapter 90 and put them to good use.
Madam Chair, for the benefit of our new members or not so new members, that there are a series of articles coming up which basically authorize us to take in money and spend it because they're not itemized revenue or appropriations usually at town meetings, so they're blanket authority. If we get a foreclosed property, if we get insurance proceeds, if we get a performance bond payment because somebody didn't perform, yeah, we can receive the money and therefore appropriate it. So that's what most of the rest of these are.
So in the spirit of that, would we like to take 35, 36, 38, 39, and 40 under that explanation and pass them in one block?
I will so move that we recommend.
Second.
All right, sir, go ahead.
Question,
Yes.
does 39 actually fall into the same bucket? It sounds like it's a little different.
To appropriate the proceeds of a performance bond?
A performance bond would be a situation where we had a contractor or a vendor fail to perform under the terms of the contract, and as a guarantee against that risk, the town would make them take out a performance bond with an insurance company or something. And so in that case, if they failed, if the bond was then paid off, we would use that money to finish the job that they didn't finish.
Or fix.
Or fix, yeah.
Okay, sure. All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent, look at us go. Those properties. Article 41, amend town charter, elected planning board members.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
before we start on that.
Sure.
Do we need to go back and look at Articles 1, 2, and 3?
No,
Did we vote on those
Yes.
already? When did we vote on those?
last meeting.
We did?
No,
I don't think so. I think we only voted on the,
started with 4, I think.
yeah, we only voted on the 3 budgets.
Motion to recommend Articles 1, 2, and 3.
Second?
this is housekeeping. Do we need
Yes.
to discuss it all?
No.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay. Thank you for keeping us on our feet here. Quite all right. Okay, so Article 41, elected planning board members. This is Mike.
Yeah, I recommend, well, this has been before I think the town meeting before, and it was rejected. It came again this year, and I think there's really they didn't build a case for it one way or another, so there's no evidence that an electric board, without any criteria for the members being like trained versus an appointed board with the same type of members, if one is better than the other, I recommend we take no action.
Do I hear a second? Okay,
No recommendation?
Well, if I would recommend, I would say we don't recommend it.
Okay, So you're moving that we do not recommend?
No, he wants,
Yeah, we don't
Oh.
recommend it.
Okay, I thought you were recommending no action as in no
Well,
recommendation.
because it really has, this article, the way it was written, really doesn't have any content. So we sort of ignore it, or we not recommend it. I think it'd be easier just to say we take no action.
Well, we can recommend, we can not recommend, we can make no recommendation, or we can defer.
Well, if that's the case, we'll say, we will not, I move that we not recommend this article.
Is there a second?
second.
Okay, any discussion on this item? Jason?
This is one of those rare times where I'm actually okay with no recommendation, because this is a straight-up political question. This is the will of the town citizenry. And so while I do assume there's probably some cost somewhere that we could figure out, I don't believe that this is something that has a direct finance committee need to respond to. So this is one of those rare occasions where I'm going to vote against the recommendation, and I'm going to come back, if the motion to not recommend fails, then I will come back with a motion to make no recommendation.
Right. Steve?
Yeah, as a career appointed member of a committee, I have to say that it is difficult enough to get qualified people to serve on committees and serve for any length of time. And I believe the people that serve on the planning board work pretty hard, and to make them stand for election or re-election every couple of years is, let me just say, if they ever do this in the finance committee, I won't be back. So I think it's not something that I would want to see happen.
Okay, Adam?
To Steve's point, and this is probably a question for John Mangiarotti, what is the approximate cost of running an election for a board?
Or is it, I mean, the election's already happening, right? It would just align with our other elections.
So there's no additional cost to adding more elected positions?
Once the legal process is completed to make the change that's being proposed, it would be just another position that gets elected, and it'd be hard to figure out how much more that would cost than not having it.
Thank you.
I'm sure there's a cost, but it's pretty hard.
Negligible. So the real cost would be in campaigning.
Which would
Thank you.
not be on, yeah. Dave?
Yeah, I want to address Jason's statement is, I think it's important with warrant articles that don't have a lot of substance in the actual printed warrant to not take a no recommendation. And the reason being is at town meeting itself, it's unclear what the actual motion is, what would be put up on the screen, what the context around that would be. Further, any ability we would have to input that could be extremely limited by the moderator or anything else going on in town meeting at that time. So without knowing what this article is really about, or any sort of study or consequences or endorsements by any other committee in town, I mean, it seems dangerous to put no recommendation, which is a green light to proceed to town meeting and describe however you wish to describe it for any proponent of any article. So I'm certainly in support of taking no recommending against this article.
Okay. Go ahead, Jason.
Just a quick housekeeping thing. I believe this is a citizen's petition, correct? So the verbiage can't be changed anyway. It has to be exactly what the petitioner puts forward. So while I hear what you say, that there's not a lot of meat on the bone, and therefore we should be careful not to open ourselves up, I would also say by the same token, if there's not enough there, how can we make any kind of recommendation at all?
Theoretically, I agree with that, but in practical reality, I think it's easy to make any sort of motion, or I mean, there's just not information here. There's no context around any of this. There's no data. There's no support from other groups in town.
Okay. Chris, start. Chris, go ahead.
Are we still discussing?
We're still discussing.
I'm a little torn by Steve's point about whether this is actually a good idea, because while I agree with him that I think would be quite hard to get good qualified candidates if this became an elected position, making it even more onerous for people to join the board, that's not a financial-based discussion. And I feel like our job here as a committee is to make financial recommendations on this. So I don't know where we want to fall with that.
Okay, Adam?
I was just going to ask Mr. Martin if the select board made a vote on this last night.
They voted no recommendation. It's in the book.
Okay, thank you.
Am I correct? Yeah. Okay. It's in front of you.
Oh, right. Because this is the brand-new printed one.
This is the one.
I'm sorry. My apologies.
Okay. I tend to agree with you, Christy, that this does not have a financial implication, and you, Jason, that this is sort of a will of the people sort of motion, but I also take into consideration that it is a very sparse article. So right now we have, anybody else have anything else they want to say? Okay, right now we have a move to not recommend, and that has been seconded. All those in favor of not recommending this article, please say aye.
Hold on, Madam Chair.
Oh.
The recommendation, I believe, was for no recommendation.
Nope.
It is for
Mike
not recommend?
moved to not recommend.
Oh, my bad. I wrote the wrong thing.
Yes, so this would be, we are now voting whether or not to not recommend, and if that doesn't pass, then I would open it up to another possible.
Good that I clarified.
So all those in favor of not recommending this article, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Nay, yes, sorry. Three nays. So,
Three nays.
Abstentions?
Do it by hand.
Okay, so it will stand that we do not recommend this article. Okay, number 42, amend zoning bylaw PCRC 9623, number of dwelling units.
This is mine.
This is Adams.
And it goes hand in hand with 43.
Yes.
Let me pull up my notes. This is something that you may recall that I was talking about, I think well over a year during some of my planning board liaison reports. The property that keeps coming up to mind is 22 Elm Street. So PCRC stands for Planned Conservation Residential Community and is set forth by a 35-page special permit rules and regulations document for the town of Acton. The purpose, as I understand it, is to encourage preservation and protection of open space by allowing buildings in a development to be grouped together and clustered into a single corner or portion of a lot more densely than normal, thereby leaving some of the developable parcel free of construction for preservation and conservation. These two articles generally say what they mean in their intent to close a loophole whereby developers can currently count what would normally be undevelopable parcels of the property already anyway, especially in terms of the wetlands, and count that area in a parcel toward the total area to calculate the maximum quantity of units that can then be clustered together in a small area on the property. I think we as a FinCom need to discuss, whether we think this has financial bearing on the town. I personally think that it does, for the reasons that it affects revenue growth via development and also added costs to services, school, so on and so forth. It has effects on 40B, and I think with regard to the up-and-coming MBTA Housing Act, I suspect that any changes we make under that rule would be ahead of this. So I don't think it's going to affect that in any negative way. The select board deferred this pending the planning board's vote. The planning board informed the petitioner by email that the changes were going to have an immediate impact on Brewster Lane Audubon Hill development, rendering it non-conforming. And the petitioner offered to amend the article as needed in order to accommodate that. I don't know whether or not that can be amended on the floor during town meeting or not. But in general, I support these. I think it's smart. I think it's meant to do what it says, and I would make a motion that we recommend both Article 42 and 43.
Second, but I have a question.
Okay, Jason.
Madam Chair, may I direct my question to the town manager?
Sure.
Mr. Town Manager, has town council had a chance to review this? And what is your take on the fact that there are two separate motions? Do they need to be taken in totem or in tandem, or is town council going to be recommending one or the other, saying that one or the other is more appropriate for the town?
So town council's currently reviewing those. They are citizen petitions. My understanding, based on presentations made last night, is that the petition sponsor intends to have both articles heard, but I would leave that to them to report to you if that's still the case. So that's what we have to report. The planning board is hearing this, or they heard it, and they're deciding tomorrow night whether or not they're recommending any of the zoning articles.
Do we, it's already moved and seconded, but do we want to potentially defer this until we hear back on whether or not the town council feels that this is legal?
Are we waiting for the town council to decide if it is legal, or to agree on which language to use?
The town will have to take action on both articles, regardless of, because they're both on the warrant. The planning board tomorrow night will be making a recommendation to the town on what it thinks of those two articles, and part of that recommendation will be based on a legal review and a planning staff review, which that hasn't happened yet. So, I mean, it's happened, but the process hasn't been completed yet.
Okay, thanks, John.
Madam Chair, under the circumstances, I don't want to get ahead of the planning board and the board of selectmen. That's a good point on this one. So I would, well, I'll leave it up to Adam.
So at this point, does the second need to be
Yeah,
retracted?
I'm going to retract my second.
And I will retract the motion and instead recommend that we defer this
Okay.
to the next meeting.
I want to hear from Mike.
Although I think if you drive around town and look at some of these sites, it seems like the developer is not respecting, maybe he's following the letter of the law, but not the spirit of the zoning to maximize the common space, the open space for the houses, so to make the houses more affordable. But when they add 8 houses instead of 5 houses, it starts to get out of hand. And I think this all has to do with the way that open space is, or the size of the lot is calculated, whether to include wetlands or not. And they do need to tighten up the rules a bit. But as I said, the developers maybe have been following the letter of the law, but it is I think it could be classified as a loophole. And they're not following the spirit of the intent of this act.
Okay. Chrissy?
I think Mike raises the point effectively that this is there are financial implications of this. I think I would strongly encourage us to put a recommendation in here. The financial implications do not change regardless of what the planning board or the select board choose. So I think it behooves us to make a recommendation that will be written in the warrant.
Jason?
So I'm absolutely inclined to recommend both of these, but I am worried about it being struck down as just not legal at all. If it's a case of, if this goes through, then it is up to town council to make it work, then I'm all for making a recommendation at this time. But that's why I asked the question about town council.
I mean,
Does that make sense?
If we recommend it and town council strikes it down, we haven't really done any damage, right?
If town council doesn't strike it down, we will have had a chance to have our recommendation in print.
So what you're saying is if we don't vote to recommend tonight and put it off, it won't be in print?
It'll be printed as deferred.
Got it.
I don't think there's any problem with us having recommended something that is then legally determined to be invalid.
Would you like to make a
Can I
motion?
make a motion?
I move that we recommend Articles 42 and 43.
Second.
Okay.
That was a nice round trip.
Steve, Do you have any further comment?
No.
Okay. Anyone else have any further comment? Okay, the motion is to recommend 42 and 43. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 2 abstentions. Steve and Dave.
Stephen Dave.
Just for our new members, it has happened that we've made a recommendation that has been printed. We have received new information, and we have re-voted right before town meeting and changed our recommendation. And then we do get the chance to state that in town meeting. I don't expect that to happen, but again, if the planning board meets and we get further information, that has happened. Yes.
Madam Chair, is my recollection correct that we've also voted recommendations in the past where we said, vote to recommend basis or pending? I thought there were some in the last couple of years. Okay, thanks.
Okay, amend zoning map 32 Weatherby Street.
That's me.
Jason.
So as I mentioned before, there's the potential for the worst-case scenario, and then there's the practical likelihood of a situation. When this same article came up 2 town meetings ago, I had this same article at the time, and I moved to not recommend it at the time, based on the fact that there were no plans at the time. I got no further information from the landowner, and I had not had the opportunity to find out that this parcel had once been zoned industrial. So if you look at this parcel, there is a large building, albeit a building in somewhat disrepair from lack of use over what I believe to be a couple of decades at this point. There is a building on there that is by no means conforming to anything that could possibly be considered residential or R2, which is the current zoning. Back in the day, this was zoned industrial. Somewhere along the line, it got rezoned as R2, and the recent purchaser of this parcel actually already is doing business under the EAV2 rules just across the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. It is their stated position that they intend on using that old building as office space and other uses consistent with what they're already doing on the other side of the rail trail in the buildings there. So, which does bring us to the worst case scenario. This is a 5.39 acre lot, which would, if changed to EAV2, would have a floor area ratio of 0.2, which could theoretically be purchased up to a FAR of 0.4 through an agreement, a special permit agreement with a landowner somewhere else along Route 2A. So on paper, if this were untouched land, which is a throwback to my archaeology article as well, if this were untouched land, this could be potentially quite damaging, just by changing from R2 to EAV2 with a potential FAR of 0.4. The density that could go in there would be something that I would not like to see. That said, given that there is a large investment in the building that is already on the property, and the stated goal of using the currently undeveloped spot as potentially as fields or as other other commercial use from Teamworks, and given that it has been this committee's stated goal, stated desire to bend the curve between residential taxation and commercial taxation. While I agree that the risk in an absolute sense is great, and that's why I voted against it 2 years ago, given that this is just a recategorization of something that was already once industrial, is going to be more or less half already covered by an existing structure, and that this is contiguous with the other EAV, I move that we recommend this article.
Second. Any further discussion?
Did someone second?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, thank you.
Adam?
Yeah, I would just allude back to the public comments at the beginning of the meeting about, once this change is made, regardless of what the plan that was presented, and I guess you've already
That is
alluded
true.
to it in your discussion, what's to keep them from,
There's nothing to keep them from it, which is true. I will say, if I may respond to your question, sir, I will say that I found the fact that the new owner is the owner of all the land on the east side of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, and they've been doing business in that spot for over 40 years, leads me to believe that inertia is going to mean that they're going to continue to do what they've been doing for the last 40 years, and therefore I believe it's more likely to be a safer bet than if they were just going to, but you're absolutely right. There is nothing keeping this 5.39 acres being turned over to a FAR of 0.4, and it's completely out of our hands, and they demo the old two structures, and man, we're in big trouble. But again, I trust them.
yeah, and I think I would opinionate with you in the same way that, we're consumers of some of the businesses on the other side of that parcel, and I don't see anybody shutting those businesses down just to develop that property, so thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Mike?
Yeah, I think that's such a key undeveloped, semi-undeveloped parcel. It's close to Route 2, the Bruce Freeman Trail. It's very visible from, as you're entering Acton. I think, and we are also short on commercial space. I think I would recommend we keep it, that we allow them to switch it to from R2 to the East Village EAV, EAV2.
Okay. Nisha?
I had a question. So what exactly does the EAV2 designation allow for?
There's I can call up the entire list, but it does allow for a number of, I'm going to use the wrong term here. Please, I'm not a lawyer. Don't get me in trouble.
Sure.
But like light industrial, so it allows for that building to be used as office space. It allows it for some of the, I'm going to stop there because I don't want to be wrong. It allows it to be used as an office space.
Okay.
And this building is definitely not going to be turned into apartments. This looks like an old 1970s style office building, which is the express use that the owner of the property across the street wants to use it for. This does allow for mixed use development, which is where some of the risk comes in. But there is a series of by right allowances once you go from a residential to the EAV2 designation. The most important one being that it allows that building to be used as an office space.
So is it correct that there would be no obstacles whatsoever if the owner does choose to convert it all to high-density housing or something like that?
It is my understanding that there is no obstacle other than the fact that they would have to raise an existing structure and go through regular permitting process for whatever they wish to move forward. But by right, their options are greatly increased by being moved to EAV2. That is true.
Okay, thank you.
Christie?
The property owner gave a presentation at last night's select board meeting. They claim to have bought the property so that it would not become open for residential development. They are living there's a house on the property, and then there's an industrial building right next to the rail trail. They bought it and are living in the house and want to use that as office and keep the space open. So while it does open up the idea that something bigger could happen there, they bought it with the intention of using it as it is currently lined up. They have long-term members of the community, so we can decide whether we want to take that into our calculus and what to do.
Adam?
So if it turns out they lie to us, we go after them with pitchforks and things like that?
Spitballs.
Yeah, torches. Okay.
Okay, so it has been recommended and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent, thank you. Okay, and zoning bylaw, non-conforming structures in historic district, I believe that is Dave. Though, maybe, It's worded different. It was setbacks for reconstruction within historic districts.
Was that mine, the one you just mentioned?
Yeah, surprise. It is worded a little differently, but, within the same dimensional setbacks, it is about the setbacks.
I can speak to it if we want.
Yeah, you want, yeah, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, Christy, it's yours. Christy, please, take it away.
Basically, as I was just saying, my neighbor's house is actually integrated to the stone wall separating us. His lot is too small. If anything were to happen that would require him to rebuild that part, his house would suddenly become completely non-conforming, and he would lose all value in the property. There are a number of issues with setbacks, et cetera, based on how old properties were built that do not comply with current zoning laws. So this says that those amendments can be made, or that's not the right word, in order to maintain the look in the historic district and not have to tear down a bunch of old buildings when things happen. They want to make it so that you can have some more leeway in dealing with structures in the historic district.
Okay, would you recommend doing that?
Yes, but I'm going to abstain from the vote. I move that we recommend.
I'll move. Okay. So I'll move that we recommend Article 45, non-conforming structures in historic districts.
Second.
Excellent. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Because you live in one? That's very nice of you. Okay. Dave, do you know anything about accessory apartments?
Which
Yes. What's that? Our old friend, zoning bylaw accessory apartments. We've had a number of variations of these over the years. The article itself references 2019 when the town voted to make these bylaw changes. Essentially, this article will slightly tweak those generally to allow for greater square footage of the individual accessory apartments, et cetera, in addition to parking space requirements. I was trying to find out what our vote was in 2019. I know we had deferred this initially, and we had wanted a little bit more information on whether, I guess, some sort of assessment of what the financial impact was. I think this is very much in line with the 2019 article, again, just loosening, or I should say slightly altering some of the requirements just to expand the square footage and parking, et cetera. It seems relatively benign, but it is a little bit of bylaw creep, it seems to me, where we had approved one thing and now, the sizing, et cetera, of it's getting larger. I don't have a strong opinion on recommending this or not. And just to be clear, I was looking for a little precedent about the financial impact to the town. And then, we always talk about the impact of schools, student enrollment, et cetera. So I welcome discussion here. I'm not prepared to make a motion, though.
Jason?
I was against this when it first came before the Finance Committee, and the first time it came to town meeting, it failed, and then it was brought back a couple of years later in this very small format, at which point it passed. And I absolutely agree with your assessment that this is bylaw creep. I was against it then, and I'm against it now, and I'll be voting against it tonight as well.
Okay. Christy?
My understanding of the original reason for this type of accessory apartment is to make it affordable, especially for seniors to stay in the town in the area they lived by moving into an accessory dwelling and renting out their primary section, also to allow families to bring in the older generation to live with them by creating additional space for them on the property. This second, you start adding more bedrooms.
Yeah, I'll be okay.
And increasing square footage, you get into a different concept of creating more of a rental property on your property, which starts running into the problems that Jason frequently mentions of worrying about how many people we're bringing in that we need to pay for services for. So I believe I supported the initial change, and I am not in support of this, owing sort of to the creep, I believe, in actual accrued benefit for homeowners, not it has moved beyond the initial stated purpose.
Okay. Anyone else? Jason? No? Oh, can I just, real quick? David, do you feel like we're missing anything in our discussion on this article?
The town manager also may be able to speak to this. I don't know all the details, but there were a number of things that the planning department found that were reasons why people couldn't have accessory apartments or accessory buildings. There were elements of the existing bylaw that didn't work for them. And so this is to address them. There are very, very few accessory dwellings. And so this addresses them to make it a little bit easier to permit them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mangiarotti, do you have any other clarification, or?
Sure, I would just mention that this is an example of proactive planning by our planning staff and planning board, and being responsive to the community input that was gathered during the development of the housing production plan. This was one of the items that came out of that process, and they brought this forward to be responsive to the needs of the community.
Okay. Go ahead, Tara. Oh, please turn on your microphone and
So,
go ahead and
Tara,
introduce yourself.
West Acton. So I actually am in favor of this, but I want to make it clear that the housing production plan encourages reuse as a primary strategy as opposed to new buildings. So I want to be careful about that in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam?
So does this address what she just mentioned with regard to reuse versus new construction, the amendments as set forth?
It's not cutting a whole new lot. It's either renovating and adding on to an existing property or repurposing, like the floor above your garage, that
Got it.
second floor level. It's not tearing down a bunch of trees, et cetera.
Yeah, can I just clarify?
Go ahead.
Oh, so the 2,000 square feet is only in existing footprints, so it's like adding a bedroom, which these houses would be able to add anyway with their ability to add 15-20% onto their houses. So in my view, it doesn't add any extra bedrooms, and I encourage you to recommend this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, can you get the mic? Okay, anybody else have any thoughts? Okay, I guess for me, from what I've heard from Dave and the town manager, it sounds like this came as a result of further study and town goals, and I'm not hearing that it causes concern about extra bedrooms. Are you still hearing that, Jason?
Yes, if part of the argument was this wasn't the right size because not enough people applied, then this is clearly saying that you're going to make it so that more people can apply. So that's that is absolutely in keeping with my concerns, which is why I would like to move to not recommend.
Second.
Okay. Christy?
All of that said, I believe, at least for houses on a septic system, you are still inherently limited in the number of bedrooms that can be added. On the other side, if the number of bedrooms was not an issue, it would not be included in this article as increasing the number of bedrooms available.
Okay. I'm hesitating because I don't know how I'm going to vote.
I agree. I am having the same problem. Should we defer this?
Yeah, so I know that we've moved and seconded to not recommend, and I'm happy to put that forward. For me, I think I would prefer to go get the text of the old motion that we voted on 2 years ago, see how much of a change this actually is.
Is it not what's
Is it,
crossed
or
out?
is it just what's crossed off here? Okay. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, so we have a motion to not recommend, and that has been seconded. All those in favor of not recommending this article, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Okay. So we have 3 abstentions. Can you just raise your hands if you voted to not recommend, just real quick? So we have
To not
3
recommend.
To not recommend, that was Dave. Okay, so we have 5, and Mike. Okay, great. So then abstentions are Adam, myself, and Isha, so we are voting to not recommend this article at this time. I'm going in the book. All right, legal notice media requirements. This one was mine. This one was, is Christie's. I just wrote that it was mine, but it was
No,
Ryan's.
this is the one I emailed you about.
Thanks.
The state says that you need to make certain legal notices, rather the town needs to make certain legal notices on a variety of websites and in a printed newspaper. The town has lost its printed newspaper. It is moving to digital only. So the town is asking for an exemption in having it be in a printed newspaper. Frankly, none of the other newspapers would be very
Appropriate.
useful.
Yeah.
Read particularly by residents. That said, I don't know that there's any financial impact to this. Based on logic, I would say that we recommend it.
Should save money, we don't have to take.
I was thinking it might.
All right.
It might be cheaper to go online than to find a newspaper to print it in, but I am concerned about the ...
Yeah. I have a big fat question mark on mine.
So the article has not been crafted yet, but the intent of the article was explained earlier. It's really just to allow the town an exemption from the current state law that requires us to post in a newspaper and on a website. So that should be ready before the warrant is printed, but due to several reasons, it's not available right now.
Okay. I'm still okay with recommending this article, if anybody wants to make a motion in that direction.
I'll move to recommend Article 47.
Second?
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Sweet. All right, polystyrene and disposable plastic reduction, this one is me. So this is an amend of the general bylaws to reduce specific polystyrene and disposable plastic containers. So it outlines in the article exactly which ones they're talking about and what would be acceptable replacements. The committee that brought this forward indicates that there will be an increased cost, there will likely be an increased cost to consumers passed on by the supplier or business to offset the more costly purchase of recyclable, compostable containers and utensils. The reason we use plastic so much is because it's cheap. And compostable and recyclable products are not there at this time. We know that, that being said, we know that polystyrene and other unencapsulated plastics are currently coming up our water supplies and have been found in the bloodstream and lungs of humans. Acton's focus on investing in the health and safety of our townspeople doesn't stop at nursing services and mental health counselors, but includes long-term environmental health, sustainability projects, and that keep our food and water safe. And our commitment on the Finance Committee to balancing the financial impact of the town should include preventing costly potential damage and needs for extensive environmental cleanup efforts that may result from the continued use of these products. We're already dealing with millions of dollars that will likely be needed for the water district to provide clean water in all of its wells due to environmental toxins. So with that in mind, you know, I think the small cost to consumers now will be far less than what it will likely cost us over time if we take no action on these types of products. So I move that we recommend this article.
Second.
Discussion. Christy?
As I recall from the presentation, this is not requesting that we ban all plastics.
Correct.
The vast majority of the takeout food that I got in the past week was not in any of the plastics this would have any effect on. So while I appreciate that there will be some cost passed on, it's certainly not going to be from anywhere. I haven't actually found anywhere that has the black plastic cutlery that they were talking about as being a problem. So I'm very comfortable recommending this and agree with the idea that we will pay for it here or pay for it in environmental cleanup and health issues.
Agreed. Any further comment? Jason?
I don't think this makes a bit of difference one way or another. I think we're going to end up paying for it down the line anyway, and so, I mean, I really don't think this makes any difference at all.
Okay. So there's been a motion to recommend and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mike, abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Jason?
And Dave left.
And Dave left us. He's got other things to do. Okay, and then home rule petition, checkout bag minimum charge. I spoke on this change from banning plastic bags, and I was opposed to it. Research suggested that banning plastic bags leads to everybody just switching over to paper bags, which is pretty much what happened. So just making that ban does not lead to behavioral changes by consumers other than the use of more costly and environmentally questionable paper bags. This fee is the necessary step that was missing from the initial action. I am content with the wealth of data provided by the Ban the Bag Committee that indicates a 15-cent bag fee is likely to incentivize a behavior change in shoppers that would move them towards consistently bringing their own bags or opting for no bags. Research bears this out. At the same time, this fee helps to offset the increased cost to our businesses when they do need to provide the more costly paper bag. So for this reason, I recommend this article.
Question.
Yes.
What would happen if?
Thanks.
What would happen if people order their groceries online, for example, and have them delivered? How would that work?
My understanding is that if it is coming from a grocery store in Acton, they would have to comply by providing paper bags, and that a fee would be assessed.
Interesting. Okay.
If you order from Shaw's, they'll send you plastic bags. That's- Any other comments? Yeah, Christy, go ahead. Sorry.
I would actually, I was expecting that answer. I was just looking at Peter Berry's email to us because I had raised that question during their presentation. I would request that we consider deferring until we can get an actual answer to that, but maybe that's not an important question for other people. He said there are other towns that have this ban that also have grocery delivery. So my concern was that this would push people to not shop at Donnellan's and Roach because of not wanting to take on the charge when I can just as easily shop from Peapod and have it delivered in plastic bags.
Peapod is coming from Stop and Shop, which isn't within Acton town. Or is it because it's delivered outside of, it may not fall under this purview?
No, Peapod, some Peapods are actually out of their own warehouses. They don't always deliver from a storefront. When I get Peapod delivery, it comes in plastic bags.
Interesting.
But Roach and Donnellan's come in paper.
And the answer to that question might change your vote?
Well, my question is partially whether it is going to hurt local businesses, not simply will local consumers have
So I
to
guess,
bear a cost.
got it.
I would love to use reusable bags in grocery delivery, but that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I guess I wonder what percentage of groceries are delivered versus picked up in store. Adam, did you have something you wanted to say?
No.
Mike?
Yeah, this, as well as the other article about the recyclable stuff, I would have rather seen the town work in conjunction with some regional authority so that it would be more consistent from a more economically sized community or group of communities, or even if they let the state set the standard. But, apparently some members in town feel that the state is not moving fast enough. So they want to implement it now. I don't like the timetable and the time and that I think administering this is going to be a nightmare. The infrastructure, the logistics of who does the counting of the bags, who collects the money, who audits that fund, things of that nature. How they administer this program could be very problematic.
So the money that's charged actually is by the business owner, and they keep the money. So like Roach Brothers, as they gave you 5 bags, would
Yeah, but
basically
they
charge you
still,
for 5
they
bags.
probably have to account for it, even if it was like gift money.
It's not, I mean, like if you go to Whole Foods, they'll charge you, they'll either give you a credit for
Right.
bringing your bag, or they'll charge you for asking for a
Right.
bag.
Walmart does the same, so
Right,
there's a
so,
number.
and so it's the individual business. I don't think there's any,
Well,
charging.
why would, if the business owner gets to keep the funds, why is it important for the health department to have any fee at all associated? Why not just give the bags to the people?
because they incur a cost to have those bags.
So I'm happy to send you also the list of sources that Peter sent me of news articles dating for the past 20 years of places that have used bag bans and different types of bags that are allowed and different fee levels. And if you just do a bag ban, which we did, people in general switch right over to paper bags, which are more costly to the businesses. Since we've already enacted that, this actually helps our businesses, our local businesses, because they are now required to collect this fee from the consumer, and that more than pays for the price difference between the plastic bags that they were buying before and the paper bags that they are forced to buy now.
It's just that I just think bills or plans of this nature, when each town has their own little priority and rule, it could be a problem and a nuisance. And I think the town needs to be, all towns need to work together and at least do it in a group of 3 or 4 towns, or even if it's 2 towns. It just doesn't make sense for one community like Acton to stand as an island, setting their own rules, and I don't think it does help business.
Okay.
It's my opinion.
Thank you. Christy?
In response to that, we actually are somewhat of an island right now in the other way. As Peter was saying in the presentation to us, that the majority of communities around us do not require a charge to be made for the use of paper bags and ban plastic bags.
Okay, any more comments? All right, so this article has been recommended and seconded, yes? I think so.
Yes.
Oh, good. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Christie abstains? All right. Moving on. Non-binding resolution, Woodlawn Mortuary Chapel. This is you, Jason?
Yes, it is. This is
Okay.
mine. I'd like to start by saying that this did get pulled. This originated from something that was at one time on the CPC list for this year. Due to a number of reasons that I'm not entirely sure of, the CPC did not vote to move forward with this, but the citizens petition remains. I did have a chance to have a pair of conversations with the petitioner and one conversation with a town employee, and I believe that actually the town and the petitioners are actually very close in their desires. I believe that that both the town and the petitioner would like to see this building be able to be returned to public use. The current reason it is not in public use is because it is not ADA compliant. Where the town and the petitioner are not in agreement are on what are the appropriate scope for the minimum requirements for ADA compliance. I would like to say that from a financial perspective, I think it's important for us to give some deference to the petitioner, since they are the descendants of the family that gave the land, the money for the chapel, and money for an ongoing private trust entrusted with the care and upkeep of the chapel. And again, I do think that we were very close. I do know that the petitioner has some specific requests in the process style, which I don't know that we have any say on being able to help guide in that regard, because that's not in the explicit words of this even non-binding resolution. But I do think that we should show some deference to the descendants, and so for that reason, I would like to make a recommendation. I would like to make a motion that we recommend this article.
Second.
Okay. So my understanding is that the CPC had this on their line item and that they found that they did not have complete support from the family, and so they pulled it. So this seems to be a response to an article that is no longer, I mean, I assumed they pulled it and that they would then go ahead and do the things in this article, which is come to an agreement on how to upgrade the chapel. So I'm not feeling that it's necessary to have any opinion about this article because it doesn't relate to its original intent.
I believe the original intent is still there, in that the descendants would like to be actively involved as part of the agreement, and that my understanding is that the first time around, the process that was used was not amenable and not acceptable to the petitioner. And so, again, since it is the remnants of their money, and if we end up taking on a responsibility for this entire chapel and make changes to it that are not in keeping with what they want, then I believe that's a violation of our financial responsibility. So I do still believe that this is something that we should recommend. Unfortunately, this is non-binding, so I can't tie anyone's hands. But I do think that it is appropriate for us to show deference to the citizenry.
Okay, Adam?
What is the fiduciary directive of the trust and will?
I'm not sure. I've not read either of those documents. My understanding is that the purpose of the trust is to allow for maintenance of the chapel.
Christy? Would you like to say something? Sure, please. We'd love to hear from you.
Should we move the microphone over so they can sit?
If you wish to sit at the table, we can move the microphone over.
It's good to stretch out.
Okay, very good, very good.
We authored the article in opposition. The town had come up with some sort of a plan that was, we did not feel it was in keeping with the intent of the original donor who passed away in 1956. What we want to see done is that the articles that were incorporated, accepted by the town of Acton, be adhered to, and that the chapel remain just the way it was originally presented, and that is as a mortuary. The money, there's a fair amount of money in there. I know a lot of other groups have been looking at this thing for a long, long time, and there's been a lot of comment about it. When is the town going to free it up? But it's not. It's the chapel trust is to preserve the building and the organ. The alterations can be made, but they should be practical. We don't need air conditioning in a building that never gets over 80 degrees. And we don't need lighting for a building that is only used in the daytime. We do need,
The padding on the wall.
yeah, we don't need padding on the walls to kill the echo. Maybe this building needs it, but I don't think the chapel does. And the money is to preserve the building. It is not to alter it. And I think there was some sort of a miscommunication in that. We have asked the town for the original documents. They don't seem to be able to provide the things. I've been a cemetery commissioner for quite a number of years. There was a process we had always used since it was accepted by the town, and that was that it start with the cemetery commissioners. They would go and find the funding to take care of it. It didn't happen this time. And like I said, I felt as a cemetery commissioner, I was slighted. And there are still, there was even comments, there are not any more of the Tuttles. Well, I'm married to one.
There are a few
So,
more too.
yeah, her great-grandmother's a Tuttle. She grew up on School Street, right next door to where the other Tuttles lived, that gave the chapel. So, yes, it's a small world, yeah, but we're still on it, so,
I just want to say one thing.
yeah.
I just want to say it's a mortuary chapel, and it's for the burial of the dead. That's what a mortuary chapel is. It's not to have parties or anything like that. And if you want to have a wedding, fine, have a wedding, but don't change the chapel. My husband has played for weddings there. They've all ended in divorce. I think it's because they got married there, frankly. But
Moral of the story, don't get married in a mortuary chapel.
that's it. But we just want it respected, and the lady had a will, and let's stick with the will and stick with respecting this chapel for Varnum Tuttle, who was a great man in this town. Thank you.
Adam, did you have a question for him?
Oh, did
Yeah, can I add that my understanding from, you were at the select board meeting last night, correct?
We were,
My-
yeah.
My understanding, for those of you who didn't get a chance to watch the select board meeting, is that the people standing before us are not against bringing the building up to ADA
Oh,
compliance.
gracious,
They're
no.
against some of the more invasive plans that have been put forth with regard to removing the organ, which the building is sort of built around, and it's the centerpiece, and the acoustics are designed for the organ, correct? And then the placement of where the ADA compliant bathroom would go. I think other than, well, and my understanding too is that the acoustic treatments would be a subsequent change to removing the organ or moving the organ, and so if that didn't happen, would not be necessary. Does that summarize it?
I think so.
Pretty
And
well.
what I think too is they want a ramp in the front. Yes. They want a toilet. Yes. And I want a ramp in the back too, in case something happens in the front and you're in a wheelchair and you can't get out of there, you have to go out the back way. So I think we have to cover all our bases for people with handicap issues. So we're all for, my husband's mother was a handicapped person. I was a nurse for 45 years. I took care of people who were handicapped. We understand totally. But just don't mess with a mortuary chapel. That's all.
We don't need a glass vestibule out front.
No.
We don't need a patio on the right-hand side.
No, we don't need anything
You know,
like that.
there are limits to what would be practical. And I do think that it should be opened to people of all religions. Even I understand there's a religious restriction on the original gift as accepted by the town, but I think that we should look at this thing from a standpoint of all the other people that are being buried in Woodlawn Cemetery and expand it to help the other people, because it was a gift for the free use of the town, the free use of the townspeople. And I think we can keep it that way.
Madam Chairwoman, as I stated earlier, I think we're actually very close, and that was the result of my conversation. So I think we're very close, and we can make it happen. But I do think that we should recommend in favor of the petitioners here.
I think, we have a second on that, right?
We do.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right.
That was also the sentiment of the select board last night, Mr. Martin in particular, that it didn't sound like the two parties were very far misaligned.
Okay. All those in favor of recommending this article, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Non-binding resolution, electric vehicle charging for residents of multifamily housing.
That is me.
Excellent.
So we had this presentation, I believe, at our last meeting from the petitioner. And in general, I am all for the sentiment. And as a laissez-faire economist, I am against the notion of meddling with private property rights and this sort of thing. But this is a non-binding resolution. It's more or less sending I think, a future message, or sort of, if I could send my future self a message, how would I like to see things go down, is kind of the sentiment. The only thing that I had a real problem with when it was presented to us was part 2, which basically says, resolve that the town of Acton should take on these roles, including, searching the funding and doing all of the grant sourcing, and also coming up with a potential financial matching program. Regardless of my personal reservation and fiscal duty reservation on that, because it's a non-binding, I think I have opted to say that we should either recommend this or have no recommendation on this. And there was a question from us during the meeting last time about, well, is this going to be for units, 100 people and above, or what have you? And the petitioner did respond this week saying that in other towns that have enacted something like this, that they've said that, well, something between 5% and 20% of parking spaces at multifamily units should be EV, and that they would go for a goal of approximately 10% is what they're thinking for this, as they use this as a stepping stone to then encourage the select board in the town to come up with some type of bylaw that would get us down this road eventually. So at this point, I don't want to make a motion, but I would say that I'm for this at the moment.
Okay, Jason?
I continue to be against this as being not appropriate for town government to step in and talk about retrofitting, or even paying to retrofit some of the, or even paying to help find funds to retrofit private property. So I would actually like to make a motion to not recommend this article.
I need to hear a second first. Second. Okay. I'm going to go to Christy and then back to Isha. Christy?
Given that this change can be done at zero cost to the homeowner, that there are options of that, it can simply be at minimal cost by adding a 240-volt outlet, which can quite likely be done within a current electrical box. This is only being requested as part of significant upgrades or new development, and it is a move in the right direction in terms of our environmental need. I strongly encourage us to support this, and recognizing that there are issues with it, those can be dealt with at the time if the select board and et cetera plan to take this up. But I think there is, along with the idea of banning the bags, et cetera, there is an economic impact to not supporting plans like this.
Okay, Isha? You're all set? Okay, thank you. Adam, did you want something?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add that one of the reasons that I feel comfortable supporting this, in addition to the fact that it's non-binding, is that should it generate bylaws or other, planning board rules, what have you, I'm assuming that we as a FinCom will have a chance to then look at that wording and make recommendations on that wording, and make recommendations on the specificity and what makes more fiscal sense at that point.
I think that's true. Steve?
Yeah, so in Nagog Woods, which has 277 units, we have 4 charging stations. So we're well less than there's like 600 cars. We're well less than 1%. They are used very infrequently, despite the fact that the residents a couple of years ago told us, oh, please, put them in. Now, I will say we put them in at basically no cost to the homeowners association. So I don't know how much incentivizing we have to do to homeowners associations to get them to do this. If the residents want it, it can be done fairly cheaply. So I'm not in favor of requiring it. Let the homeowners associations decide if they want to do it or not.
Mike?
Yeah, a couple of things. Where they talked about, it might be incidental to this article, but, an incentive program to help provide more electric vehicles. What kind of incentive program? How much money are we talking about? Where's the money coming from? And why is it just low-income families? If you want an incentive to increase the population of electric vehicles, why not give an incentive to everyone equally? Adding these charging stations to multifamily homes, I don't think there's anything preventing them from doing that today. Why should we pay for it? I mean, they're driving, it's an expense of driving that particular kind of vehicle. This is an accessory that's required, and you either pay for it or don't expect someone else to pay for it. Multifamily housing, where I think there are a lot of Teslas in town. You look around the community and you see a lot of Teslas. Well, and a lot of electric vehicles all over the place, but so therefore that means there should be more charging stations. And, we have them here at Town Hall, but condo associations should put them in, or apartment associations should also put them in, but, they would also charge the tenant as part of their fee. It shouldn't be a town expense. It's only fair. But, we all have to be stewards of the land, and if electric vehicles is the way to go, so be it. But, the town shouldn't have to be the bankroll for these programs. If they're a good program, they would stand on their own merits. They would be adopted by the community. So this plan, as written, I would tend to say no.
Okay. And for clarification purposes, they're not asking the town to fund this. This isn't money coming out of town funds. This is, as Steve said, their homeowners association was able to acquire them at no cost. It does ask the town to look for matching grants and to use those matching grant funds. And that's money, but it's earmarked money. I just want to be clear that this is not money out of Prop 2.5. It's other monies.
A matching grant would have to come from somewhere.
I believe if the way I read it was seek that grant money.
They seek grant money and then they have a matching grant.
And then use the grant money
So if
acquired.
they get $100,000 from some outside source and Acton General Fund matches it at $100,000, that's $100,000 out of taxpayer.
There's no matching funds here. Where does it say
It says
that?
the town should create.
a matching grant program for owners.
I read it in a different way. I'm sorry. I read that the town should use the grant money found as a matching grant to the developer. But either way. Sure, Tara.
Sorry, thank you. I was part of the group that put this together, although I'm a non-voting member, because it is over 200 apartment dwellers who have very little control over their environment. They may not be in a privileged space where, they're much more expensive condos. Nagog is beautiful. I lived there once. These are people who live in apartment buildings like Briarbrook and Strawberry Hill and Great Road, and they have no control at all, and they're just looking for help from the government to help encourage and provide grants if the grants are available. It's non-binding. It would mean a lot to a couple hundred new people that are we're getting people to come to town meeting, and these, this group over here was the one that was, I think it's a nice thing to do, just like you did for those guys. I would thank you if you would recommend. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy.
Christine, you can speak to this. more than the rest of us, but my understanding is the only reasonable way to handle charging your car on a regular basis is to charge it overnight in your driveway if you're doing, or wherever, but if you're doing any reasonable commute distance. So there, while you see commercial charging stations around, it is not at all easy to use them as your primary car, especially since we don't have easy ways to get to and from places that might have a charging station available. And as I said, you can get an effectively free-to-you setup. You still pay to use it, but you
Right.
pay for gasoline in your gasoline car.
Yeah, if we just plugged if we just plugged our car in to a regular house plug, which we could do, it charges in about, half a day, 12 hours or so. We have a fast charger in our home, and it charges in about 4 hours fully. So obviously, if we lived in an apartment or a townhouse or a structure that didn't have access to overnight plug-in, we wouldn't own an electric vehicle. So it is a barrier for people living in those sort of community housing situations. Jason?
I would just also like to reiterate that, I believe Mr. Noon pointed out that in his condo unit, one of the first things the realtors have on display is that they've got chargers. So this is a case of the market is going to take care, should be able to take care of itself and should not need any government subsidy. And then also, I would argue that if that this is still, it may not be the case in the near future, one hopes not, but a 100% EV is still more expensive than the average vehicle that's going to be seen in the garages in town. So I still do not see why this should be government subsidied in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. Charlie, go ahead.
These discussions always remind me of Margaret Thatcher's comment that sooner or later you run out of other people's money.
Thank you for that insight.
And I think we're very close to that.
Okay. There is a motion to not recommend. And a second. All those in favor of not recommending, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Abstentions? Okay.
3-2.
Raise your hand if you said nay.
Raise your hand if you said nay.
Two of us.
Okay.
3-2.
Right.
Two abstentions?
No abstentions.
5-2.
How many ayes?
Please
5.
raise your hand if you said aye.
5.
Okay.
5 not counting Steve. Not that you don't count Steve.
And for the record, I am absolutely for this, and especially knowing from Steve that these places can actually get them put in for no cost. Please move forward and get them in there for no cost. But I agree with not putting the burden on the town for making that happen, and economic feasibility analysis of affordable housing trust.
That's me.
Excellent.
Cool. So just to summarize kind of my view of this particular article, so it appears the risk to the town is limited to the $2,500 for the study itself. The petitioner, who I spent a little bit of time with in the group that she's working with, has done a lot of diligence around this, so they've kind of ensured that the $2,500 will result in an economic, viable study, or an effective study, I should say. And that the creation of a trust is something exclusive of this, right? So this is just for the study. The creation of a trust would be something that would be evaluated further down the line. And I think, given all this, I would recommend this article from a Finance Committee perspective.
Second.
All right. Moved and seconded. Do we have any further discussion?
Should be noted that $2,500 will come out of free cash. I know this committee's a little sensitive to free cash usage, but I'm so curious as to if we could actually get a consultant study for $2,500. I'd be amazed. But I have a lot of questions about this, but I think that's a great place to start and very little money to spend on it.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Great. Non-binding resolution protecting Acton's potable water. I have Avi for that one. Were you able to look into that at all?
It's a non-binding resolution.
Avi, can we just move Mike's microphone just a little towards you so that public at home can hear you well? Okay.
It's a non-binding resolution. It's asking for more focus on protecting potent water. I don't see any objection, there's no harm in just
Okay.
voting for it.
So your general sense would be that we should recommend this article?
Sorry?
Your general sense would be to recommend
Yeah.
this, okay. Are there any seconds on recommending this? Okay, any discussion? Does everybody kind of understand what the intent of this non-binding resolution is? And I'm not seeing any downsides, Steve?
We should be concerned about our water, especially with the PFAS issues that the water district is struggling with. I don't see a problem with recommending this article.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Great. Land tree clearing limits bylaw.
Yeah, so this next one was me. I may have misfired on this because I just assumed this was a no recommendation because it was non-binding and it was a little bit more informative. But, so happy to open it up for further discussion.
Would you like
Okay.
to defer it?
I assume no recommendation, but I actually don't know what deferral means. It just means for further, until information comes to light. I don't know what additional
Yeah.
information is going to come to light on this, right?
The select board has deferred it. Do you? Yeah, I was, do you know why, Adam, or should I just ask Mr. Martin why?
I would go to Mr. Martin.
Mr. Martin, would you mind taking a second and letting us know why you all voted to defer on the land tree clearing limits bylaw?
Yeah, I believe the planning board was considering it, and we wanted to get background information from them.
Okay. Are you all good with also deferring until we hear
Yeah.
back from the planning board?
Makes sense.
But, yes, but I would like to make sure that we do discuss it during our pre-town
Okay.
meeting.
Yep, all right, so I will add this to the list of definitely discussed at the pre-town meeting. We will defer.
Unfortunately, he did not know that I like us to always make a recommendation one way or the other.
I did not know that.
And just to more clearly answer Steve's question, when we defer, we're just deferring
Good, I'm
to the
glad
next meeting.
I'm
Yeah,
oh,
unfortunately, with the current timeline, even though we'll actually have another meeting before town meeting that we may be able to discuss this at. But the warrant will already have been printed so that it can be sent home in time. So it just won't, it'll say deferred. We may have already made up our mind. If not, then we do it right before the meeting. Okay, non-binding resolution limiting negative impacts of unaffordable growth. Isha.
So I feel, while the intent of this non-binding resolution may be positive, the way that this resolution is written actually pretty much lacks teeth. I mean, it speaks to some of the conversation we had about Article 41, as to how the Acton Planning Board works. Telling the planning board that they should do more of something, I mean, really achieves nothing, So I would say either we not recommend it or we have no recommendation, but I would not recommend it. Yes, Christy.
I disagree with the concept that telling them what we think they should do is a problem. I don't know how much I believe. I haven't thought as much about my views on the financial aspect of this and giving a recommendation purely on that front, but I think there is a lot of value, especially at town meeting, for giving direction to boards and the town about what we think are important aspects of their various jobs to focus on.
So my understanding, point well taken, my understanding was that it was already in the planning board's, list of objectives.
But the claim is that they're not doing it, that this has fallen off their list of more important things that is
Mr.
happening
Nolan?
owing to being understaffed or under-resourced.
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah, I agree somewhat with Christie, but the fact is, by, say, recommending this article, we're agreeing with that. And I don't know that that's true.
Right.
They may be doing it, they may not be doing it, I don't know. The petitioner obviously thinks they're not. And I just don't like the language, you know.
Yeah.
Limiting negative impacts of unaffordable growth. Well, this community has struggled for years trying to decide whether growth is a good thing or a bad thing in terms of, and I don't know that we've ever answered it. So it's just, there's too much language in here that makes assumptions that I'm not willing to go along with.
It's not a very clear rationale either. I mean, I can see there is some financial impact, clearly. You know, obviously, as a committee, we've been championing long-range planning for a variety of different things. I completely understand that. But I don't think we have the authority necessarily to tell the planning board what to do, you know. We can, so I will take it upon this committee's advisement as to what the recommendation should be, whether it's not recommend or have no recommendation.
Madam Chair, I'll move to not recommend Article 55.
I'll second. Mike, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just had some comments that planning could be tightened up a bit in town is not a question. Although whose responsibility it is, you know, should be described in here. I think it mischaracterizes the role of the planning board. I think they're more of an adjudication body that would determine if you conform or not conform. I don't think that they really have the capability of doing a master plan. That really should belong to the permanent planning department of the town of Acton. So I just think for a number of reasons we should not be recommending this article.
It's a good point, Mike. When we've done master plans, we put special committees together to work on the master plan. We didn't, you know, ask the planning board to do it.
Okay. Christie?
I think this raises a good point that I have a number of assumptions about what I think the planning board does. I hope that we have a board out there ensuring that we have enough water for all of the permits that are being approved, that there are limitations being looked at. We have a limited number of resources in this town, and I would hope that there's some board, which I had assumed was the planning board, based on, just because it sounds like planning to me. So I would love to know more about what the planning board does.
Have we ever had a liaison to the planning board?
I'm the current liaison.
Adam, what do they
What does the
do?
planning board do, Adam?
Tuesday night is the problem.
They're always on the same Tuesday night as ours.
I see.
I generally just read their notes.
I think next year Christie should be your liaison to the planning board.
And also not be able to attend their meetings.
Are they not recorded?
They're not.
Oh, that's a problem.
Didn't Roland used to be on the planning board?
Whenever there's something that looks particularly interesting, I might send them an email. Sorry, whenever there's something that looks particularly interesting, I've sent them an email in the past and always get a quick response.
But what do they do? What is their charter?
It's really just it's almost like call it like a judgmental board. They sort of pass judgment on requests for permits based on the bylaws as set forth by the town is mostly what they hear.
So it's mostly hearings of,
Yeah.
Does this meet law or not? Go ahead, Tara, I'll give you a minute.
I am the petitioner, and state law requires planning boards to plan, to make careful studies of the needs and the resources of town, and to make recommendations, not just to wait for developer applications. So I very much hope that even if the FinCom finds it's not their role to take a position on this, that you as individuals hope that you actually have the planning board that adheres to state law. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you just hit the mic real quick? Thanks, appreciate it. Okay, so, did you want to say something, or? No, okay. We have a motion to not recommend, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor of not recommending, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, so we have one nay and two abstentions. 1, 2, 3, 4 ayes.
Correct. 2, 1, 4.
Madam Chair, can I step in?
Yes, please.
Just for everyone's edification, I've pulled up the planning board website, and their top stated responsibility is studying the resources and needs of the town, particularly conditions affecting public welfare and safety related to land use and development. So while it is stated that what they mostly do is the bullet point overseeing subdivisions and administration of the subdivision bylaws, along with numerous special permits, they are chartered to do the long-term planning that this statement claims they should focus further on.
Excellent. Thank you, Christy. Article 56, mobilizing Acton's climate action plan.
That's me.
That's you.
Basically, the town meeting voted that we have a climate action plan. People have been working at it for a long time. This just asks the select board and the town to get moving on it.
Yeah.
On the recommendations made.
Okay.
I would recommend this. That said, I don't know what the financial basis would be apart from, it's going to keep costing us more money if we don't make these moves.
My guess is the financial impact will come in when they actually start enacting the things where they're being, the vague idea of things they're being asked to enact. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. So you would recommend it?
I recommend it. I even move that we recommend this article.
Ooh, second.
Ooh, excellent. Tara, would you like to say something?
Yes, number 2, the major goal in the beginning is to rezone, to encourage new building. I don't think that reduces the carbon footprint ever, so I think that was a mistake for that to get in there, and so I hope that any kind of statement in support of this will make a condition that's conditional on not causing new building. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Unaffordable new building.
Right.
Can you switch it
Mike.
off, please?
Thanks. All right, any conversation about this? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Abstentions? Mike abstained. All right, last one, and it is mine. Non-binding resolution changing the state flag. On January 11th of 2021, Governor Baker signed the bill to redesign the Massachusetts state flag and seal. The current state seal, adopted in 1898, prominently features a Native American figure. Historical records show that figure is a composite based on a portrait of a Native American chief from the Chippewa tribe, which is primarily located in Montana and the Dakotas, not Massachusetts. Above his head is an arm holding a colonial-era broadsword believed to be the sword of Miles Standish, a Plymouth Colony military commander known in part for killing Native Americans. The Native American holds a downward-pointed arrow that has been interpreted as signifying the pacification of the Native population. Can't imagine why people find this offensive. Although the bill was signed more than a year ago, no change has been made. So the article, which is being proposed at many town meetings across the state, is a non-binding resolution urging the state legislature to get on with it already. I will say right now that this resolution has my full support, and I will vote for it at town meeting. However, it does not have any financial implications for this body or our town, so my inclination is to suggest we make no recommendation.
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend.
Second. Any further discussion? We're voting to recommend it. To recommend that they get on with it already with the state flag.
Are we therefore buying into all these whereases?
No, well, I mean, it's non-binding, are we?
I mean, there's a whole lot of things in there that I don't think anybody really knows. You know? I mean, I'd be very comfortable with a no recommendation on this one.
Are you comfortable with the recommendation, or you want to recommend it?
Let's vote. Do you want to vote?
All those in favor of recommending, say aye.
Aye. That sounds
All
like two.
those opposed, say nay. Nay. Okay, I will accept a new motion.
There we go.
I move that we not recommend.
No, I will not accept that motion.
Okay, I'll move that we make no recommendation.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor of making no recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We'll vote for it at town meeting, though.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
I thought that was a no-brainer to recommend, but you convinced me otherwise, but I decided to stick with mine.
Awesome. We have, I've lost the agenda.
No, I have one thing that I need to ask.
Please update us, Jason.
We have the last of the scheduled POVs tomorrow, and one of the members is unable to make it, so I need one more volunteer. If not, I will do it if no one else is willing to, if no one else is willing to do it.
Where and when?
Douglas, it's either 7 or 7:30 in
Online?
Zoom. If you don't want it, I'll do it. Then I'll do it. I kept your name out of it. You didn't need to. You didn't need to fess up. The other possible person wasn't here, so you could have ducked. I'll do it. I'll do it. I was just seeing if anyone wanted it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason.
Hold one.
Jason, if something comes up.
Anybody else have anything else they would like to report? Okay. Let me just find an email, hopefully from Dr. Buchalin. I did manage to get the Minuteman superintendent to present to our meeting. But the only time he can do it is May 3rd, which is next Tuesday. So is everybody available to meet next Tuesday? Hopefully we would be able to finalize any deferred warrant articles and hear a presentation from the Minuteman superintendent, but otherwise it should be a short meeting. Is there anybody who's not available?
That's an excellent question.
Actually-
I don't think anybody's ever asked that.
That may preclude a meeting on the 10th.
Are you willing to say my word?
There's a good chance, I don't have anything else on the agenda for the 10th, and I would think that if we meet, this is the last deadline to get anything in the warrant, so there's no reason to then meet again on the 10th if we can meet right before town meeting.
It's in person, right?
Yeah.
Could we move it by 15 minutes? Because otherwise.
I'll move it for you. Yeah. So it would be 7:45, and I will drop the 10th off of our schedule. I like the way he negotiates here. Okay, so plan to be here at 7:45 on the 3rd. Charlie, would you like to address something before we move to adjourn?
I have a question. I got a notice today that there'll be an ALG meeting. Is there some new information that I don't know about?
So this committee requested that the outward years, so not what we've already agreed upon, but the outward years are a little more reflective of what we know, or at least what we suspect costs are going to be. And we would like that to be reflected in the town warrant, because the ALG is printed in the warrant. So even though we already know those numbers, we officially have to meet, we have to agree and then adjourn. It'll be a very short meeting with just that focus in mind. Did I capture that accurately, Mr. Town Manager? Yeah. Does that make sense?
No. I'll tell you why, very
Please.
briefly. The out years, first of all, there's never been a real discussion about any of that. But we now know that things, the situation is going to be very different. For one thing, the contract with the teachers' union expires a year from now. So this time next year, be sitting here wondering what the school committee is going to vote for that contract, which will affect every number in the spreadsheet for fiscal '24. And it's going to be a problem. And if we allow the budgets as they now stand for '23 to remain, it's going to be a bigger problem, because the numbers for '23 are unrealistic anyway, because of inflation and other considerations. So if you're going to change anything, you're going to start with fiscal '23, which you don't have time to do. So my sad expectation is that these are the good old days. This time next year, we're going to wish we had done something, but we're not going to do it because it's too late. So changing the numbers, and I'll say it differently, all the years that I've gone to town meetings, nobody has ever asked a question about the spreadsheet beyond the very next year. The second and third year, nobody pays any attention to, for good reason, because it's never realistic. It's never discussed by ALG or anybody until, 2 weeks before the deadline. So why bother? I think realistically, we should take a hard look at fiscal '23. You have time to do it? Well, you can change the numbers all the way down to, 6 o'clock on the first day of town meeting if you want to. But it would take some doing, and I just doubt that's going to happen. So unfortunately, we are allowing a problem to grow. That's all I can offer.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jason.
My understanding, Madam Chair, from a friend of mine who is on the ALG, who is not in this room, is that the main purpose of the ALG meeting on Thursday is to have the opening salvo in the are we or are we not going to have an override war next year.
That'll be an interesting conversation. Yep. Christy?
Could you please share that ALG spreadsheet with us?
When I have it, I will. I do not have it yet. So this meeting came about because this committee asked that the outward years at least show numbers that have already been agreed upon. The school gave some guesstimates, the superintendent and their financial advisor agreed that those were more likely numbers than what is in the spreadsheet as it was approved, but that those increases, those numbers are not reflected in the current ALG plan, which would be printed in the warrant. And from our perspective, if we're going to say that the sky is falling a little, how can we do that if we haven't shown that we've planned for that even a little bit? I understand that the numbers will not be correct, but let's get them closer. Let's try. It's better than nothing.
And if
that's what we're going for. Go ahead, Jason.
Sorry, Madam Chair. And if there's going to be a war next year, the sooner we know, the better.
Sure. Yes, agreed.
Can I add one more thing, Jason, reminded me? I just took a look at what an override would mean. It's $137 per million. How many millions would we need for an override? It's always more than the immediate need, because if you're going to do an override, you better do for 5 years. So let's say it's 7 million. So that would add $800-900 to the average single-family home tax bill. You think that's going to pass? I don't.
I don't want to be surprised by it either. Okay, I think we've wrapped up our business, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn. If anybody down that end wanted to make a motion to adjourn, like Avi, would you care to make a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I don't think he's had this privilege yet.
Oh, so sorry. Yes. So usually our newest presenting member,
Yeah.
until they are no longer the newest presenting member, makes our motions to adjourn. So all you have to do is move to adjourn. And with that language, just say you move to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Yeah. So I hereby motion to adjourn the meeting.
Excellent.
I second.
Awesome. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you all very much.